This is a really depressing website for women. Women's National Basketball Association, which formerly saw a flurry of activity throughout the regular season, is presently handling amid a crisis, notwithstanding the reality that the postseason matches are happening at the stands display various image rows of vacant chairs and a declining curiosity in the games. Nobody was ready for the emptiness that has been produced in response to Caitlin Clark's absence. There's a serious query that is still unclear. How did it happen? Those fans who were formerly excited to watch every game are currently relocating from the Athletics. Even if she is one of the league's top players, A.A. Wilson has observed this alteration and has voiced her displeasure with the circumstances in which the postseason hasn't accompanied by the appropriate amount of energy. Wilson's presence by itself is not enough to cover the gaps that have been abandoned.
Now, because I may not talk about the WNBA again until April.
Well, okay.
Trust me, I'm not going to be watching.
Clark's withdrawal from the postseason has generated a cascading impact it's hard to overlook. A statistic that has led to the league entering a state of the fact that the ratings are causing fear have decreased by nearly half for the National Basketball Association for Women, WNBA, which intended to benefit from Clark's widespread appeal during the postseason. This is a painful pill to swallow. The circumstances as they stand now is that instead of picking up steam, they are struggling to maintain even a tiny percentage of the audience they attracted in the previous.
Let's just say the ratings aren't the same with Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever now eliminated. Game 1 of the Aces Liberty matchup on Sunday drew an average of 929,000 viewers. Was down nearly 50% from last Sunday's Fever Sun contest. By the way, not only was viewership down,
The A.A. Wilson's sense of discontent is evident. How enthralled was the hype over the playoffs has subsided. Even so, given that she has been playing and giving it her all, both players and spectators of the game are left with feeling irritated due to the exhilaration that was typically connected to Clark's games are not available at all, discovered amid a reduction in declining ratings with each. The Women's National Basketball Association that the WNBA is a part of, unknown territory.
I understand Caitlin Clark is a superstar in the making, okay? I understand she's arguably a generational talent. I get all of that. But to put something like this up and to just sit there and say that she's the reason why the WNBA ratings are what they are.
The lack of Caitlin Clark has revealed a terrible truth for the National Basketball Association for Women, WNBA. They never realized how much the sketch that she had developed throughout season. Clark offered an unparalleled degree of enthusiasm at the table, which garnered admirers from within and, nevertheless, outside the stadium. The league that took a while to recognize the degree of her impact is currently bearing the repercussions due to. Since Clark left, the games have not won. Their brilliance and the quantity of viewers be a sobering reminder of what has been taken away.
We don't have the privilege of just playing basketball. We have to care about these social issues. She's playing in a social issues league that wants to wear shirts that say vote, push some sort of political agenda. She just wants to.
Since the Women's National Basketball Team, Fever, connection, WNBA has encountered challenges in locating its foundation. Caitlin Clark's absence was not just a loss for her group, but was a setback to the allure of the fans across the league had tuned in, come to witness her breathtaking performances as well as those that weren't. The games didn't have any sense of excitement, as was painfully apparent, because the league relied on Clark's star power as viewers dwindled. The National Basketball Association for Women, WNBA Association, fumbling to determine what went wrong.
I believe 2 Sundays ago with Caitlin Clark, she drew 1.8 million viewers on an NFL Sunday. This past NFL Sunday, A'ja Wilson drew 900,000.
There is no deception in the data. In truth, Clark's capacity to draw in viewers was unmatched to the extent that it even overpowered the presence of Aho Wilson throughout pivotal postseason matches. But Wilson was a prominent person in the National Basketball Association for Women. She couldn't compete in the WNBA. Regarding viewership, Clark and the league, which the supporters are aware of, comparison that highlights how an important component of Clark's leaving has been each day that goes by throughout the playoffs. The challenge of maintaining the number of interested parties grows steadily, challenging to overcome.
12 million people are watching ESPN for a game. If that game was on CBS, they probably would have had 25, 30 million people watching that.
Caitlin. The games created by Clark appealed to a larger audience than the average fan base had expected her to be able to draw in both casual and ardent viewers, sports enthusiasts, therefore generating an environment that made every game to the degree of an occasion that had to be closely monitored even throughout away games where her supporters regularly exceeded the number of the domestic teams. Because to influence, the Indiana Fever became. This was one of the main draws for the audience, even though her admirers weren't there. Away matches for the The Women's National Basketball Association, WNBA, tried to recreate that enchantment in her absence. Yet thus far, the outcomes have been dismal.
One of the playoffs, the Fever had nearly 2 million viewers tuning in, while all the other games had around 400,000. Even the WNBA Countdown, which was aired before the Indiana Fever game, had more viewers than 2 of the series.
WNBA has found it challenging to replicate the same degree of enthusiasm as Clark's presence created following her departure from the league's initiatives to retain supporters. Participated due of the lack of their most notable member has been unsuccessfully leaving behind succeeding quiet arenas with vacant seats. The postseason, which should be a period of heightened drama and sense of involvement, eerie silence among the once listening admirers, eagerly are becoming less engaged with the playoffs themselves, and the game feel remarkably quiet.
The only one that I've seen other than Steph Curry that can do that. She's incredible. She's the best player to watch. I've said this all year. She's the best player to watch playing basketball, other than Steph Curry.
Considering that Clark left AA, Wilson and the league as a whole have been obliged to carry out an exhaustive assessment of their circumstances, the challenges faced by the Women's National Association of Basketball, the WNBA, is more than just the outcome of the loss of only one player, but instead they are an illustration of a more basic issue with the league's marketing strategy itself and communicates with followers. The league must reconsider its approach if it seeks to sustain the curiosity of Wilson. A fan has contributed to the court by providing high-level performances, but without the extra draw that Clark supplied is clear. Thinks the league should reconsider its strategy.
Every single time that they were on the road, you even had Dallas Wings players saying, like, it kind of sucks seeing so many Indiana Fever in 2020 or 22 jerseys in the stands, but it's also cool to see a lot of people in the stands. Like, Indiana Fever was turning away games into home games, and so it's kind of sad that through all of that, Caitlin was still advocating for players on the other team to get bonuses because she saw the kind of money and eyeballs and viewership that all of this was generating.
Within, not to mention having an impact in Indiana. Clark's impact might be seen all around the complete WNBA environment because of her capacity to draw admirers. Whenever she performed, she could create a tense atmosphere that even her opponents couldn't help but notice how. But the league was not able to make the most of this time and place as the playoffs are having trouble drawing spectators to the Women's National Basketball Association, WNBA. When faced with an unforgiving truth, they've been left in possession of a product that no lengthier draws the same degree of the notice that it already received, and the thrill that Clark offered wasn't more extended presence.
Women that have been calling for the equality, and now that there is the chance for them to start getting paid more because the exposure's up. Because it's her, you have people like, what's her name, Jamelia Hill or what? I can't stand her. Yeah. You got these women who are coming on here and they're saying it's because
due to discussions about race during Clark's absence, and fame have assumed a central role, which has further deflected interest away from the main issue, competing with the league that is preserving the fervor of its supporters. The Women's NBA stands for the National Basketball Association, had been going through a tough period, maneuvering through these stories while also trying to hold on to its last stars, the spotlight, which has only been beneficial to draw attention to the lack of enthusiasm that Clark combined the efforts of Wilson and other celebrities to cover that gap. The league faces the challenge of difficult task of developing a strategy to advance in the postseason of the National Basketball Women's Connection. The WNBA is the reason why arenas are vacant, is not merely embarrassing, rather it is a clear picture of the possibilities that the NBAs have been missed by the league. Aya Wilson, renowned for being among the most vocal stars in the league, have expressed her displeasure with the decreasing participation despite the fact that she talks about the challenges the league, which she neglects to mention. One conspicuously missing element from her narrative, the way that the National Basketball Association for Women, WNBA, managed the presence of Caitlin Clark. Wilson seems to be annoyed by, focused on the signs as opposed to, compared to the reason, and she seems to be ignoring the reality that the league not handle its emerging star as if they were. Acknowledge that she deserving followers arrived from throughout the league to see Clark participate because he offered a fresh surge of vitality to the league as a result of her achievements in Indiana. Fever games evolved into occasions that people noted her on their calendars. Acts transformed the video games into happenings, though, as she is no longer in a component of the formula. The thrill has faded, and athletes such as Wilson are left to bear the responsibility of choosing, assembling the fragments, but instead of acknowledging the role the league contributed to wasting Clark's potential, the emphasis now is on making an effort to restore lost audience numbers without examining the causes of the fall. First and foremost, the decline in the level of fan interaction is. A.A. Wilson is clearly frustrated. She understands that the postseason should, as the most thrilling segment of the season, the period of time each seed is busy, with each game including an electric, the environment connected to it, as a result of how the women's basketball dealt with Clark. Several admirers possess a unfavorable perception of the league. They recall the way that Clark was handled on the court, how the abuse she experienced was usually disregarded, and how the league didn't seem to act quickly to step in. While she was the object of attacks during these moments don't just vanish. Instead, long periods of time, they stay in the recollections of those who had hoped to see one of Clark's players. Quality really shines, and it makes sense for Wilson is unhappy that there isn't excitement in the stands, yet it's crucial to find out the explanations for why fans could feel less willing to pay attention after all of Clark's presence generated a degree of curiosity that, since her departure, has not been matched. The business, by defending and elevating the participant, who could have emerged as the NBA failed to produce the next big star, to take advantage of a chance to enhance the standard of its games following. Since Clark left, the empty seats are used, keeping in mind all the time the leagues unable to fully utilize the chance that was provided for them throughout the period that the Women's National Basketball Association, WNBA, battling to handle declining viewership. Wilson's displeasure is evident. Volumes when she scans her surroundings, observes that the throng is growing. The arenas are quieter and smaller. Is not a buzz that need to be connected, maintaining a championship run despite the fact that she's communicating with annoyance with these symptoms. There's not enough recognition with relation to the most basic issues. that ultimately resulted in the departure of Clark wasn't just the passing of a. Instead, it was the exit of a player. Story that might bring about a significant modification in the league is a contributing factor in this year's playoffs felt so different. Due to the Women's National Basketball Association, the WNBA Association was unable to establish an ambience that Clark could sense, wholeheartedly endorsed and grateful for. Wilson, it could be easier to mention the challenges involved in completing chairs rather than tackling the role that the league has conducted itself in. That events have occurred all throughout the season. Clark was a cause for enthusiasm, and the playoffs ought to have provided a chance to increase that enthusiasm even more. The league is baffled by the reason there has been such a substantial decrease in curiosity, and consequently, they have become inquiries into the issue too. To be honest with you, fans had hoped that Clark's narrative would go on, but for now, that has been significantly shortened. Many of them have given up on viewing the viewers have observed the errors made by the Women's National Association for Basketball, WNBA, has created, and the existence of vacant seats delivers a message during a pivotal playoff series. Unambiguous message, the gap that has been left by a participant whose influence went more than simply rebounds and assists are challenging for A.O. Wilson to occupy, despite the reality that she has a unique combination of among skills. Clark's capacity to draw admirers was unmatched, and her departure has produced an empty space that the league and its stars can't seem to fill up. The irritation that Wilson is experiencing is tangible, however it might also be. Additionally, it is insufficient to just be able to return admirers to the stands. It is additionally required to understand the reasons behind their departure. First and foremost, a part of the narrative that is indisputable is the way that the league handled with Clark's medical care during his was performing the tunes on the court. She accepted the lack of defense that she obtained, and the way that her rough play met talent rather than acknowledgement were all apparent to the supporters. The league's incapacity to support its own stars, which makes it challenging to support the league as Wilson and associates endeavor to restore the vigor that earlier games. They are currently facing the repercussions of a story that the National Basketball Association for Women, the WNBA, was never completely perfect. There is a more serious issue that Aya Wilson, in the National Basketball for Women, WNBA Association, must handle, despite the reality that she is legitimately worried about how the playoffs are going. Considering the league's choice to depend on for Clark to pique curiosity was always a dangerous action, but the inability to make sure that she felt safe and appreciated was a more serious mistake. Wilson is forced to participate in front of smaller groups of people, seeking to regain the backing of fans who no longer exhibit the same zeal as. The lack of a celebrity is not the only element that brought about this predicament. The way that the league handled while she was with that superstar presence is another important component for the NBA women's basketball connection. The vacant seats in the WNBA are not merely an evidence of a drop in popularity. Additionally, they reflect the league's negligent handling of its most gifted athletes, in spite of the fact that Wilson's annoyance makes sense. It is a segment of a more extensive story that explains what happens when a league neglects to show the players how much they are appreciated, who might alter. Everything has been reduced to a nothingness as a result of Wilson and Clark's departure. Can't possibly fill it by herself, no matter how much work she puts into her game, but rather than being a honoring of what distinguishes the Women's National Basketball Association. Fantastic that the playoffs are now a summary of what the league has permitted. Lost? What are your opinions on this circumstance? Please let me know below. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Thank you for viewing. I'll be posting more videos. Until we meet again in the next one.